This workshop is to basically give a broad understanding on how to develop the proposal and budgeting part. Today's session is led by WRI team. We have Madhura, Rajiv and Chetan join with us, who will be taking us through the session. Now over to you, WRI team.
Thanks, Manju. Good afternoon, everyone. I will just start sharing my screen. Is my screen
Madhura,
visible?
Madhura, just one second. Okay, could we also just request everyone else to mute that so that there's no disturbance? Thank you.
Thanks. So, like Manju already mentioned, today's session is about approach and methodology that we will be, looking at during our next phase of SUMA, where we have already started thinking about what we are doing, how to develop proposal, and what to really implement in our neighborhoods. And we have already done a lot of data collection, and we are in the process of doing analysis. A lot of communities have already received their analysis from the SUMA team, and discussions are already on. So so today let's see how to actually do a hands-on exercise as to, once we have certain data with us, how to actually translate it into a proposal. So today this is going to be like most of the session is going to be interactive, where I will need inputs from all of you, and let's try to formulate a proposal. Let's do a hands-on exercise. So before going into today's session, just wanted to do a small recap from last workshop, that what we discussed. So last workshop was about design principles. So I guess most of us were there, most of you were attended the workshop. So we discussed about how, while we develop proposal, what is it that we want to look at. So these are different principles we actually learned last time, which are how to make spaces accessible, safe, green, collective, contextual, and say scalable. So a lot of so these are few principles we discussed, where communities can come up with what they want to highlight as a principle in their proposal. So which could be 2-3 of them, which could be focusing just on one of them, or different ways. So we discussed this in last presentation. Today we'll go a step ahead and try to develop a proposal. So this is the overall process which we are going to look at today. So firstly, starting with how to develop a proposal for our neighborhood. Then we'll talk about the stakeholder consultation, which will be required. I'll go in detail about this when we come to that. Then we'll look at exploration of different materials and budgeting of the projects, and then talk about maintenance. So these are different stages in which we will be doing our project ahead. We'll take our projects ahead. So let's look at how to do this. Now, before that, like I mentioned, that we have been working on this data analysis since quite a long time now. So this is a snippet from one of the community. Let's just consider this as an example. So in one of the community, the data showed that work. So this is those of you who have already seen household surveys that report for your communities might be able to relate to these charts. But just to tell you that if all of you remember, we did in our household surveys, we asked people about their travel diary. So what are different types of trips they take, and what is the mode they use. And then we ask them for we ask them details about one particular trip, right? So this is one example. Just consider this as one example of a neighborhood, that here in this neighborhood, for educational and work trip, there's maximum people are using buses. right? And there amongst these work trips, 70% of the trips are happening on work, and the education trips, almost 40% people are using BMTC bus, 40% people are walking. So of course, if someone is using a bus, there might be a lot of chunk of people who would be walking to the bus stop. So, and then if we look at detail about one trip, which is education trip. So looking at that, if you see, a major share of these trips are happening through public transport. So either they must be walking to the bus stop and then taking a bus, or that sort of a thing. So this particular neighborhood, let's call it neighborhood X, has a lot of trips happening via bus. So now for this, and then in the FGDs that we conducted, a lot of people in this neighborhood said that the buses are crowded and the buses, they don't come on time. So a lot of people actually raised issues regarding the public transport that is there in their neighborhood. So looking at this, what we have done is there's one case scenario which we have come up with. Now, if you remember this picture, we discussed about this picture of the street not being very safe for women in last workshop. So we thought that probably it would be a good idea to just explore this street or this situation a little more. So now I will just now narrate a story, a very small story, and on that we'll start building up our proposal. So this story has come out of all the focus group discussions that we have had, and then it has also come up from the data that we have received. So here is a story of Radha, who is a kid who goes to school every day with her grandparents. So the story goes this way, that Radha is dropped by her grandparents to school every day. They walk to the bus stop together, and her grandparents find it difficult to walk on the street. Now they're walking from this street to the bus stop, right? And they generally never leave her hand due to fear of speeding traffic on this road. So generally it's very crowded. During rainy season, now this is a picture of the same street when you go a little ahead, that during rainy season, these drains, they get full with storm water, making it difficult to reach the bus stop, and she ends up going to school with her mother on a two-wheeler. So as part, like this is also very important part, because under SUMA we are also targeting that, how can we make those smaller neighborhood trips which are happening on personal vehicle to public transport. So this is what is happening, because of these issues, she ends up going with her mother on a two-wheeler sometimes. Now, what happens when they go to the bus stop? So the bus stop is generally crowded and noisy. They end up standing on the street. They tend to wait for a long time for the right bus to arrive. When the bus arrives, it does not halt at the bus stop, but stops further away from the bus stop. They get stuck in the crowd as everyone rushes towards it. Buses are mostly crowded, and they find it difficult to board the bus, and thus have to wait for another bus to come. Now, Radha sometimes gets late to school due to this. So I'm sure you guys must have already realized that these sort of discussions we have had in our focus group conversations also. So now this is overall story of Radha and her grandparents walking from their house to the bus stop. Now, what we are going to do next is we are going now. I will now let's collaborate on certain things of this neighborhood. Now we have this site identified. First thing, what we are going to do is we are going to understand what issues are there on this site. So here I want all of you to participate in this discussion and tell me that what issues do you think Radha and her grandparents would face while walking on this street? Anyone can volunteer to start.
Can I volunteer?
Sure, please. Yes.
So firstly, there is no designated walkway.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I mean, that itself is, comprehensive because a lot of, obstructions on the way and all those things. Definitely, if they want to go on the side, all those
Yeah.
construction material and other things lying. So if the walkway was there and all these things will not be there, the construction material obstruction along the path. No, first of all, there is no path, but even if you imagine a path, there is a lot of obstructions along the path.
Yes, yes.
They have to
Obstructions.
jostle. They have to jostle to go through.
Yes, yes. So that means there are a lot of obstructions as well. Yeah, that makes it very difficult. Yes. Anything else?
I think there is no lighting, also very little signage because the road curves and, it's not possible to see the oncoming traffic.
Yes, that's also very important.
And of course, there is all debris on the road. There is a transformer on the so-called footpath area. There is some piping. Materials are stored on the road, that sort of thing. The footpath itself is not constructed actually. So,
Yes.
and even the drainage does not seem to be formed. So if it rains, the road will, there will be water on the road if it doesn't drain properly. If the proper drains are not there,
Yes.
during monsoon, it will be difficult to walk.
Safety basically.
There is no signage towards the bus stop. We don't see signages for a bus stop. And secondly, it's a blind spot, so there is no way to see, or if there's a mirror in the corner, you could identify oncoming traffic or something like that.
Yes. And no signage towards bus stop, someone said. Yeah.
Yes, no signage for bus stop.
Now I just want you to also think from a perspective of elderly, because they are walking here. So of course, a few points we already covered, that there are so many obstacles. There's no designated pathway. So so accessibility is also one of the thing. Anything you could think that probably if an elderly is walking with their grandchild, what else do you think would you want here, or sort of that you can point out as an issue?
Hello, can I talk?
Yes, please.
Yeah. What people told is there is no designated pathways, and also at least 1 minute interval there should be the urinary points and as well as the this thing that is water facilities. That would be helpful, because in old age normally people frequently have that problem with it, that prostate and will be enlarged and frequent urination. So it is very unpleasant.
Yeah, that's a very important point.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything?
Actually, the lighting also should be there. Suppose during night time, the street lights is equally important.
Yes. So lighting is also one of the issue, because right now we don't see much lighting here. So that is also a point. Yes. And a lot of garbage there, and also maybe some sort of benches at certain intervals would be good for these elderly to just rest for a while before they go ahead, because actually if you see, there's no shading also along this street. We can just see one tree here which is shading a bit, where even this person is also sitting. So if you see that there's no point where they can actually halt or stop for a while, they won't there's a good chance they won't be able to walk for this distance at a go, right? So probably some sort of pause points.
In the picture on the right, actually, there's an open gutter. Again, that is dangerous in the sense that in the night, and if the gutter is full, people can fall into it. If there isn't enough lighting, children can fall into the gutter if it is full of water and get washed away. It has happened in sometimes in Bangalore when gutters are full and the same level of water is maintained in the gutter as well as on the road. People don't know where the road is and where the gutter is, and people have fallen in and got washed away.
Yes.
The gutter has to be covered.
Yes. Okay, so we'll come down to solutions, but here the issue basically is that open drains are really dangerous at night, so someone can fall. So yeah, I think that's a, yeah, is anyone speaking?
Shashi, you want to say something?
Yeah. So one of the things I just noticed was this road is a downhill road, and there is no speed restrictors for vehicles oncoming from the downhill on the second picture. And the second thing is road crossing. So I see a shops on the right side. So there is no zebra crossing, or there's no signs for people to cross. And how do we, if they have to go to the shop, or if the bus stop is on the right-hand side, how will they cross from the left side? So that is something missing.
Yes, that's a very important point again. Yeah, so I think, yeah, so these are like, it's quite a comprehensive list we have, like another thing I just, thought that probably there's this transformer right here, right? So there needs to be something around it so that, that fear of them touching some wire or something, it gets ruled out. So probably I was just thinking that this is also one of the issue, because this wires would be just hanging there, or, this might be dangerous. Yeah, and because right now it is just covered with those barbed wires, but then those wires are also a bit, if an elderly just happens to hold it, it would be very it won't be that good an experience. So yeah, now these are some issues we thought that we can see, it's quite evident that they are there on the street. Now let's go to this bus stop, that they are walking to this bus stop, right? So can we also talk about some issues which you see in these pictures related to bus stop, and just think about that story, where we actually saw that, what's happening at this bus stop. I think a lot of us have already heard about these things, that, the bus is not stopping at the bus stop, it's stopping a little farther away, there's so much crowd that it becomes difficult for elderly to climb the bus. So anything, if someone wants to start off with?
Yeah, I can add a point. Sorry, go ahead, Jayanti.
The bus markings are not there. What buses stop here? That is very important.
Markings.
One thing I noticed is that there's a step there. So it is very hard for elderly people to climb down for sitting areas, and even physically challenged and others. It's very hard for them to.
Yeah.
I don't think there are lights in the bus stop. It doesn't seem like there are lights.
Okay.
I think the bus numbers are not marked, the routes and the timings and all that. That is one thing. Secondly, as a general principle, not just in the bus stop as such, one general issue is cleanliness. So what happens is in the middle of the road, as you can see from all these pictures, the road is actually most clean in the middle of the road because the traffic keeps moving. So all the dust and the garbage and everything gets pushed to the side. So generally, as a matter of principle, what happens, whether all the there is more dirt and garbage and trash and even dust and mud and anything you can think of is all towards the edge of the road. So what happens is generally people will prefer to walk on the road rather than go towards the edge, because the edges are more uneven. There will be obstructions. Garbage will be there, mud will be there, water logging will be there, all kinds of things. So I think from a walking point perspective, one has to make it easy to walk on the edge of the road or on the footpath. Should be equally good, if not better, than walking on the road, which so far I don't see anywhere actually. People always find the road to be better to walk.
Can I? Yeah, basically the bus stop is encroaching the footpath. So people are sitting there, you cannot walk, you have to walk on the road. Second, there is no bus bay. any bus stop, it looks like a 2-lane road, and if bus stops in front of the bus stop, it's blocking the traffic. I think this road is bus bay is one thing which is missing, and the footpath is not there sufficient enough for people to walk.
Yes, yes. So yeah, a lot of important issues which came in that, there's no footpath. If there is a footpath, then if there was a footpath, maybe it is encroached by this bus stop. And yeah, some really important points. Even so ultimately people start walking on the road, and when they walk on the road, those edges are not even walkable. They are full of dust and all. So yeah, quite important things. And yeah, so now that we know that these are some of the issues they might face, and I think a lot of you also mentioned about how important it is from the elderly perspective also. So now we know the issues. So now let's think about what is it that we want to change. That what should Radha and her grandfathers be able to do while they go to while they're this journey from their house to bus stop. What should they be able to do? So this is an example that they should be able to walk safely to the bus stop. So basically the behaviors, what is it that you want them to be able to do? So any ideas on thoughts on this?
They should know at what frequency the bus comes approximately, and average wait time when they go to school or work or whatever it is. So
Yes.
some level of reliability should be there built in.
Yes.
Yeah, I would add that redesign of the bus stops. So there is visibility on both sides because the boards that is there that blocks the visibility of the bus oncoming buses if there are 2 or more buses coming, and preferably a small bus bay like I've seen in new bus stops that's been designed that buses can come inside and not stand block the entire road, so the other buses can be viewed. And the third thing is I also want to see that the design of the shelter itself, there is a rainwater when it comes, it actually seeps inside the bus stop. So even the little bit of extension of the roofing that will help people not get drenched and then be safer for them.
Okay, so basically the behavior is that they should be able to wait there safely, that
Yes.
sort of a thing. So the kind of thing what you're saying, we'll come to that. We'll definitely come to that when we talk about solutions. Right now, these are, we are talking about the changes, or that desirable behavior. For example, one thing what we also was there, a part of the story was that she gets late to the school ultimately because of so many things that happen on the way. So the main behavior, that what is it that we want to target, is that she should be able to reach her school on time, right? So this is one thing we want to target. Now if that is our target, then we can think about a lot of solutions around it. Like even if we say that, okay, that, like someone also said about reliability of the bus, they should be able, they should know that what is the average waiting time. So then they are also prepared. Now how to do that, how to make sure that they know this. So like someone also suggested that probably a nice hoarding with with the bus routes and their timings and all of that is also displayed. That helps. So I'll just add here that Radha should be able to reach on time. Now, I think now, to be able to do this, what is it that we should do? Like someone, so you just suggested that, there should be, we'll go one by one. Okay, wait, let's go to the bus stop only. Okay, so here you suggested that there should be proper shading from rain and sun. So that they should be able to stand there properly or in better way. So any other solutions if someone wants to talk about?
All of these bus stops seem to be a place for advertising. Shakti Masala or any of those things. Instead, it could be better used for anything related to the bus routes, the bus network, or any informative, that should be more apt, I think, rather than just using it as a place for advertising.
Yeah, so generally these are these advertisements and all, they are given because then that money is generally used for maintenance or that sort of a thing. But definitely that shouldn't compromise this legibility or the signages and information boards on that bus stop. So yes, bus stops should have informative wayfinding, maybe. Yeah. Any other suggestions? I think someone spoke about these steps, no, that we need some ramps
Yes,
or
yes, there should be there.
accessible.
Yeah, we need to make that easy access for wheelchair and also elderly, which also means that the tiles that we use should be non-slip kind of tiles.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and then they should have also bubbles on them so that blind or specially able people can actually step on them and they know they're entering the bus stop.
Yes.
And the bus route information should also be in braille or anything, like, or voice in case of people who can't hear or any of those things, challenges.
So I'll call it inclusive signages.
Yeah, I've seen many places people can touch actually and then read through the braille.
Yeah.
So on the boards.
And then we also spoke about these markings, no? That right now here there are no markings, so bus stop lines. The buses. Yeah. Now, okay, so these we'll come back to this. Let's go back to the street. Now here, let's talk about solutions. So we spoke about various issues, right? So that there's so much garbage dump happening. There's no designated walkways. We spoke about no lighting, no signages. So what is it that we want to see here?
All the electrical lines should go underground.
Yes, underground services.
So that the
The
poles are all
transformer
removed.
the transformer needs to be shifted to off the footpath and put into some public land.
Okay. Or
And then
other thing is so the another solution I'll just tell you that one way is also that you can put a screen around it and make it nice and beautiful so that it's not visually very bad, but it protects you also, because if what if there is no public land adjacent to it, right? So ultimately the idea is to be going to protect people. So okay, of course one of the solution is putting transformer.
The transformers can always be shifted into common amenity sites, corners of parkland, playgrounds, and other things. They should not be on the footpaths. In fact, the High Court has also said so. But in the worst case scenario, if no public land is available, you will have to design the support in such a way that people can walk safely below the
Yes.
transformer. The transformer should be elevated and there should be a safe walkway below the transformer.
Yes. Let's say that only. Safe walkway. And footpaths, we need footpath here?
Yes, you need gutters for drainage of water. I think on the left, first photograph on the left, there are no gutters for drainage of water. And then you need footpaths. You need better signage. You need street lighting.
Yeah.
There is no clear lane marking if you see on the right side. And it also has to have that chip, that whatever, to prevent overspeeding and coming onto the other side of the road.
Basically, yeah, traffic calming measures.
Yeah.
Yeah, adding some rumble strips on the oncoming traffic would also help reduce the speed of the oncoming vehicles.
I think a speed breaker would be better.
Okay. I'll just write it here. Okay. Okay. Pedestrian crossings. Someone suggested some time back that there's no pedestrian crossing at all.
Yes, at the junction, this is Shashi there. I just mentioned on the right side there are some shops, so there's no
Yeah.
pedestrian crossing to that
Yes.
side.
Yes. Sorry, because I'm sharing screen, I can't see your names. So sorry, I can't call your names out, but yeah, I can hear you.
Plant some trees.
Yes. Shading. That is also something. And let's say thermal comfort.
Seatings, if could be done.
Eating at
I mean, wherever we are planting trees, no? If you are planting trees in that place, particular shade, you can there could be a bench.
yeah, so that's quite interesting because then we can
Yes.
design seating spaces along with
Yeah, it'll.
these, and they can also have some signages there, or something for people to sit and talk in the evening, probably elderly people to come and sit. So
Put
that
some
would be a
water,
nice place.
place for water, drinking water.
Yes. So yeah, drinking water facility. Public
And
toilets also we
and
discussed.
public toilet,
Yes.
yeah.
Public toilet, yeah.
uh, Garbage, the dumping the garbage in a specific place.
Yeah, so waste management has to be done. Okay, so the thing is that now these are mainly the physical interventions that we can do on site. Now there could be some different other interventions as well. Like for example, there could there could be some technological interventions. There could be some non-spatial interventions. Like technological meaning we might need some CCTV cameras because if you remember, we discussed that how the street is not very safe for women. So lighting, yes, we can put lighting. Then there could be these kind of safety measures also which can be looked at, right? Even there could be some technological interventions in terms of traffic, the speeding of traffic. So there could be these different kinds of interventions that also we can look at. So the idea is that under SUMA, it's not that we just want to do any just physical interventions, but it could be different things. Like for example, we spoke about how they should be able to, like ma'am was saying, that they should be able to know that how much average waiting time has to be there. So there could be some sort of technological interventions there also, so that they get to know on an app where when the bus is going to come, how far is it, is it different ways to do that, and this kind of technology is there, is available. We can make it actually integrate it also. So these are different kinds of interventions which we can see here. Now the next part is, now that we know that what is our site, what are issues there, who are the people who are going to use it, and then who are the people going to use it, we can go back to the data also to see that we have these things mapped. We can always at every point go back to data what we have collected and see what sort of interventions we can propose. So of course, with all these different kinds of solutions that we just discussed, now it is also very important to know who to talk to, and it can be, of course, the government stakeholders, like so let's just talk about these. That who do you think we should talk to if we want to do these interventions that we discussed, for street and for this bus stop? Who do you think we should talk to? And the stakeholders can, let's first talk about government stakeholders. Who would be important?
BESCOM, about the
you need to
transformer
talk
and
to,
stuff.
I think you need to talk to BMTC, BESCOM, BBMP, police. I mean, everybody is involved. Otherwise, it would be incomplete.
Yeah, that would be important, of course. BBMP for the road works, traffic police for, help us do this traffic calming there, and, their approval would also be very important for us, their onboarding. BESCOM, yes. Who else?
DULT.
BWSSB also, because they tend to dig up a lot of places if there's a clog.
Yes. Yes. So, like in case of SUMA, even DULT is going to help you coordinate with all these, these different stakeholders who you will be working with as part of your proposals. So it would be very important. So that's the best part of it, because, we have one coordinating agency who can help us out with talking to these people and, help us coordinate these things. So of course, so now we know very specifically that, these people are responsible for what part of our project. Now there are some other stakeholders as well, like who are the non-government stakeholders you think we should talk to?
What about police? They also need to know, right?
Yes, traffic police, or you're saying
not the traffic police,
general?
law and order police.
Okay. Yes, they should also be informed about what's happening.
Resident welfare associations.
Yes.
The commercial.
What role do you think they can play in this?
I think the buy-in and the communication with the community, the connect with the community, I think it's very important in terms of, see, for example, if we want to make any change, it will not be very easy unless we have large numbers for advocacy and other aspects. We need people to rally behind us. If I, as an individual, if I go and ask somebody for a change, it will not happen. But if an RWA is more legal entity, and when an RWA says, they always a force behind it.
Yeah, that's great.
The local coordinator, MLA,
elected representatives.
Yes.
Because they also have their own funds. Sometimes they may be forthcoming to spend some part of the money along with us.
Yes. And the school itself, which is going to be the beneficiary of this project in case intervention, they should also be involved.
So I'll write Radha and her grandfather.
Yeah.
Grandparents, sorry. First. So basically the users. Okay. So now we also saw some shop on this, na? So probably those shopkeepers should also know what's happening, or if they have any suggestions in terms of what we are implementing. So those would also be important. If there are any auto stands, in your nearby side, on your side, then of course auto rickshaw union also has to be taken on board. So these are different sorts of people who can help us to like you said, that that they help us make these things easy. And if they are aware of what we are doing and we have taken them on board, they can also help later on in terms of, when things are getting executed on site, they can help us in supervision also. That, they say, okay, don't worry, I will look at it, what is happening in front of my shop. Because, because I know that you've listened to me when you did your designs or you developed your proposals. So that sort of a connect becomes very important. So yeah, I think that, there are these different people who we need to involve at various stages. So we'll come to that a little bit later. Now let's go down to what we are going to do under SUMA, like after this exercise. So this is basically what we are going to do, but let's look at some steps. So what are those, consider this as a checklist on when we are developing proposal in a neighborhood, what is it that we are going to do? So the first thing is that we will look at the insights from the data that we have collected through household surveys, through FGDs, what we have learned. So we'll refer to all those reports. Then we will check with other agencies, like for example, BBMP, that if there are any upcoming projects. So if BBMP is already doing one street in your neighborhood, and through your data is also suggesting some interventions which fall under that, then can we also collaborate with BBMP on this project and develop a collaborative sort of a proposal on that. Then, so just checking that is important. So what's happening, if any other agency is doing any work there, so that sort of a thing. Then we can develop a list of different types of proposals. So now this data and what ideas you also have for your neighborhood, this will lead to a lot of proposals. Let's make an exhaustive list. There could be these physical interventions that we want to do, a street, junctions, and all of that. That could be there. But there could be some others also. Like, someone wants to do safety infrastructure in their neighborhood. Someone wants to do something else based on there could be so many proposals that you feel are very important. So let's make that complete exhaustive list. And wherever required, we can collaborate or you see what other agencies are doing and co-create projects together. Then we have to assign an overall budget. If we want to do this street, which is like 500 meter street or 1 kilometer street, what is it that what is that budget that overall? What is it that it will be required? How much money will be required? Then we can so we assign budgets to all these projects. Then we can see how much can we do under SUMA, because the funds under SUMA are limited. In that fund, how much we can do, which projects we can execute. Then we can also we can help you with finding different other sources of funding also, like you rightly mentioned that local corporators, MLAs, they have their own funds. Can they also fund part of the project? So that so there are various ways we can do this. We can approach CSR for this and those kind of things. So what are different ways in which we can execute all these proposals if we put it together? We can identify that. Then now the site analysis and issue identification. This is what we exactly did for the street and bus stop example, that we identified where we want to do. Then we started finding like those small issues which we think are important to resolve. And then so basically we did site analysis and issue identification, then develop a vision. So that's what we also did, that what is that positive behavior that you want to see? That if X number of people are telling you that, okay, they are getting late because this bus is not coming on time, how to ensure? So this is this what you want to target? So do you want to target this to enhance this public transport infrastructure in your neighborhood? Is that your vision? So that sort of a thing. So develop a vision. Then develop conceptual proposals. So these could be drawings, it could be sketches, this could be photos on which you sketch out that, okay, this is what we want to do, this is what we want to see, some conceptual proposals we make at this stage. And then after this, we do one stakeholder consultations, like we discussed, who these people are, who should be involved. Let's take our proposals to these people, all these shopkeepers, auto rickshaw unions, everybody, the BWSSB, BESCOM, BMB, everyone. So of course the SUMA task force will help you in this coordination, but we need to identify and talk to them about the proposal so that they also give their inputs. And then we can we discuss with them. So one community sort of engagement we can do, where we can tell them what we are planning and take their suggestions. Then we can update our solutions, or if we have a list of 10 exhaustive solutions, we can, after discussing with this community, we can say that, okay, looks like these 5 are most important ones. So we can have that list of those 5 important solutions that we need to prioritize. Then we finalize the proposals based on inputs that have been given by the community or the people who we consulted. The next step would be to prepare technical drawings. For this, you can have some student volunteers. Those architecture colleges will have these students who would want to get involved. You can if you have an architect in your community, if that architect wants to engage, you can get the drawings done from them. There could be other technical experts within your community. We can explore who can actually help in preparing these technical drawings, and of course the details which are required for execution. Now, the next thing is that we need to do some exploration in terms of what materials are required and budgeting and all of that, because now we have a finalized proposal. So now we have to see which materials we want to use, how much that material costs. what are those materials? What are those textures? Like someone said that there has to be anti-skid material at the bus stop because, it's very important for elderly because it rains, it gets slippery. So anti-skid material is something you want to prioritize. Yes, we can select that. We can have a range of material palettes where we can actually we can select. So once we have these materials there, we have to prepare estimates, which we also call it bill of quantities, BOQs, and then do a due diligence of these materials. Once we have this prepared, what we do is we hire a contractor to execute it. Now, who can the contractor be? You can identify a contractor within your neighborhood. You can also, check with if you have any engineering agency in your neighborhood who is interested in doing this. Or we can simply get 3 quotations from different contractors and select one best quotation for us. So, and of course, these are just a few ways. You can also come up with different ways that suits you, which is completely fine. Just that once we have this ready, we need approval from DOLT to, select that you have selected this contractor and why, how, all those things. And then we sign a contract or agreement with that contractor that he has to do this work so that we have accountability, of course. So, so at this point we have some material lists ready for you, that how much those things cost, how to bring that, how to get it, and all of that. So we'll share. I don't want to go in detail of this, but we have it, and we'll share it with you all. That what are different materials, how to get it, where to get it. All these things we will be able to share with you. But after this, there is one major thing which comes about. Once we have executed, we have to keep in mind that maintenance is also one of the things which we have to look at from the start, because so that we have certain funds allocated to it also, or some ideas on that from the starting. So that's why we wanted to talk about this maintenance right now. Let me know. Let me know if it is too much information. We can go back and look at the processes again towards the end. But at this stage, to explain about different maintenance models and a case study, I would like to invite Chetan to take this forward.
Yes, hi. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes. So to understand maintenance, we'll be looking at a case study just to know what it is when we execute any project. How do we go forward? So within that, first we'll touch up on different types of models. So they are not exhaustive here. I've chosen 3 models, but they can be mix of it. And then we do maintenance at different stages. So we have to think of during implementation maintenance, post-implementation maintenance. And also when we are implementing any project, there has to be supervision from the community in terms of what exactly we expected and actually is that the thing that's happening on the ground. So let's move forward. So while understanding maintenance models, so one of the models is Citizens Charter. So this is a place when local citizens prepare and sign up for a charter wherein they are aware of what is the project that is being done and what are the responsibilities everyone has. Like I have a responsibility that I will walk on footpath, or I will not throw garbage anywhere else but in the dustbin and everything. And so everyone in the community is aware. So the biggest thing here is community participation. So everyone owns the project, what's happening. It's not just the partners, Suma partners are with us, but the entire community. Next is the RW or citizen group monitor. So this is where there could be a small committee that could be formed and which monitors the project while it is being executed. And also it's post maintenance for a few months or years, depending upon the type of project. It also differs from type to type. So there could be redressal models. Then if someone has a minor issue with what has been done, they could approach. And this community, because it's a small entity, people can actually reach out to them very easily. And then the continuation can happen. There could be roles assigned to each and everyone, and it is within designated site limits. And the next model is simply hiring agency. So this could be also part of the contract. Whoever is going to do the contractor who's going to execute the project could be added with a responsibility of actually handling the defect liability period, as we call in contract. It is mostly maintenance. DLP is called maintenance, or else we can hire agency per thing basis in terms of if we have parking allotted along any garden or something, which could be paid parking. So we can just bring in agency only for that point, wherein the paid parking has to be managed, something like that. And this is not just the exhaustive list. It can all be mixed together. Some part could be citizen charter, something would be monitored by RWA. At some places there could be hiring agency, or there could be hiring agency for everything. So when we look at these things, we also should understand what are the pros and cons of these things. So for citizen charter, the biggest pro is that every citizen is aware of what's happening, and hence they have the ownership of this particular project. Like if it's a pop-up lane or a good footpath that we're looking forward to, they know it and they will take care of it. It's the least expensive and everyone has shared responsibility. The con could be that it might require high level of participation, which sometimes in certain communities is not possible. But also there could be issues where people are not behavior dependency of this one is a little high. Could be time consuming sometimes because some communities are not that in contact with each other. But when we move forward, RWA, the pros of RWA thing, next, yes, is it's more institutionalized and structured. So there is selected group of committee who are responsible and they know their roles. It is also time efficient because everyone knows to whom to reach out, and they also know who has the authority to do certain things while doing this particular project. The cons could be that there's a little higher responsibility on the committee that has been formed by the RWA or the citizen groups, the people. But still, this is a better model to look forward to because it's more structured. And then while hiring agency, the biggest advantage is it's contractual, so has higher enforcement, and they are most liable, and you can be getting reports hourly, monthly, weekly, depending upon the type of contract you want, and payments also could vary stage to stage. And then the con obviously is it's very expensive. If we are thinking the entire neighborhood has to be managed by an hired agency, it would be very expensive. And also it's very dependent on the agency. If the agency doesn't perform, our projects might get affected by that. And less community participation because then people themselves are not participating and having ownership of this project. So we have to find the mix, and there's obviously open scope to find out new and newer ideas to maintain. But these are a few models that we know of. So we wanted to make you aware of this. So let's see a case study that we had done in Mumbai. So this was a junction design project wherein the designs were prepared and discussed with the community and also with the government agencies like traffic police, BBMP engineers, and everyone. But there were few places where not everyone was convinced of certain points. So the thing was that it was chosen to do some temporary testing on ground. So this was tested for around 5 weeks throughout. And with that, we identified with the community who can participate, who can help us. And then it started to build up, and we were sure that we are going to do this trial. With that, the first thing obviously comes up is how to source our materials. Where should we bring everything from? So we discussed with community, we discussed with the corporation, with the traffic police. So traffic police told that we have 100 barricades. That's the max we can provide, but there's nothing else we can do. So if you see on the left-hand side bottom image, you see those barricades being put around. So that is how we try to demarcate certain geometry on ground. We painted everything first so that we are sure like now this is what we want to be sure of. Then we put up barricades. Once the barricades were in place, we thought let's activate something of it. So the left corner, if you see on the bottom image, that was the area we thought we could activate with the community. So people came with certain people had some colors. Then also the municipal corporation had this maintenance cell. They had certain paints like the yellow paint and something which they normally use for curb painting and all. So those were gathered. And we started with some small, simple designs. Some architecture college students came to identify how we could design this. And then there were activities like some cycling event was happening. So everyone started participating. But the role remained is to monitor the use of it. Were the traffic going smoothly? How was it happening? If there was something changes needed. So monitoring and documentation was very important. And then we could move forward. Go next. But even during this trial, there is certain part of maintenance. So like the paint's wearing off. So we had to have that identified responsibility. So we at WRI would be then going in few days or might be 2 times a day to check out if anything has moved. So barricades, we would put them back in place. Even communities would be helpful in terms of like if you see the corner barricade at the right left hand side corner that was moved, they put it back into that place. Yes, so that one was moved, so they would put it back in the place and also see if there is something that was obstructing the movement, then change that dimension by a bit to identify, oh, now does it work? So to and fro, and then watering plants if there were some planters brought in, and then repositioning certain things, and minor damages if there is something done, we would repaint on it, something like that. So this is all which went into the process. And now once everyone was convinced, we could actually go forward and execute it. Go next. So in this part, you have to understand once we go into this stage where we are actually executing something, the responsibility of maintenance has to be handed over because it's permanent implementation. So then as we had discussed with all the agencies all along, they knew what is going to be handed over to what. Like the traffic islands would be handed over to BBMP, like Municipal Corporation of Bombay at that point. And then painting was taken over by traffic police. Then the street lights, as these few features were new and there was not light there, so there were new street lights that had to be brought in. There were some planters put around, so Garden Department of Bombay took it over. So all of these were taken up, and then cleaning and regular maintenance were taken over by BBM, Mumbai Municipal Corporation. So that was always the dialogue, that they knew what's coming in and we would help them of identifying which are the places which need continuation. And we had to monitor, like, this is what exactly needs to happen and would be monitored further. So that's how we move forward. And this is what also we are going to do in our communities once we start implementing our final proposals. Yes, moving forward. So once now we have implemented everything, so that is just our first phase. But what is our goal? It is towards developing a sustainable neighborhood. So let me take an example. Next. So I'm taking this example from Dudnakundi. So this is like an holistic vision that the neighborhood developed for itself under SUMA. But once we go forward, next. There could be a pilot site identification. This is just example, okay? So don't think that this is being done. This is what we are just assuming for the case right now. So there could be this X area which is identified. There could be cycle track made, good footpaths. There could be utilities like water, bus stop, something. These things are taken up. Then going forward, we would do implementation of this pilot. So once the designs are finalized and everything is done, we would implement this entire thing. And going forward, there would be an impact assessment. So what went right, what went wrong, we need to understand. And then might be minor changes are needed so that it could be replicated or grown towards neighborhood. Next is scaling up. So we just take learnings from this and now grow entire project throughout the neighborhood going forward. So just for example, if this is the pilot that is executed, the next phase could be looking at replicating certain things and trying to complete that loop, which is similar proposal. Then going forward, there could be second phase, which actually talks about some alterations and completing the missing links or something. And then going forward to complete the entire proposal. So the entire neighborhood now becomes sustainable. And next. So yeah, in the end, it's the entire vision for the neighborhood. And the entire goal is to create this sustainable neighborhood. So all parts of this project should be stitched together to make this entire proposal for the neighborhood and not just focus on one implementation at one project at one site. There are multiple projects, as rightly Madhura mentioned. We would make this exhaustive list, like exhaustive list of things that we are going to implement, and then prioritize a few. Then might be go forward, find another funding sources, how to fund certain things. Like there could be CSR funding for junction improvement, could be for safety, could be for bus stop improvement. We could use that. We could use MLA funds for benches, anything, any and all of these combinations could be done to extend the entire proposal beyond what SUMA fund can provide you. Yes, over to you, Madhura.
Yeah, thanks, Chetan. Just I would just add one point
Yes,
that, you
please.
know, we just showed this case study where we did some temporary trials and then, you know, implemented it permanent. But this is not a mandate. Not all the proposals in neighborhood will have to go through this process. This is just for example, you know, just to show that, you know, if we are looking at maintenance, we have to look at it from at different points, you know, at different stages in our project. We need to make sure that we are considering some sort of funds or, you know, some sort of strategies for maintenance. So it's not a mandate to do temporary trials or temporary trials and
Yes,
then do
actually,
permanent.
just
Yeah.
to clarify that, so this was a project where traffic police were not sure. So that's why we could not directly go for implementation. So that is when we did the trial. So it's not always necessary to do a trial. We can directly do implementation, because if there is only footpath improvement and many other things like signage is something, we don't have to do trials for them. We can directly go into permanent implementations. And they could be mixed also, like pop-up lanes is a mix of that we see on the ORR. They are a temporary way of installation, but they are semi-permanent in their nature. There are signages along with it, similar to that.
Yeah. So yeah, based on the nature of project that we are going to implement in particular neighborhood, you know, we can decide if we need a trial before implementing or not. You know, those things we can discuss. But once we have our proposals ready, after that we can of course discuss on, you know, where it is required, where it is not required. So that discussion can happen with the nodal team also that is working with you. So yeah, I guess this is the whole process that we would be following while we work ahead now. So now I would like to open floor for questions.
Can I just come in?
Yes, please.
So I just wanted to, I'm Bharat from Rajmal Vilas, Rotary Rajmal Vilas. I just wanted to mention, since the group is here and the WRI team and DOLT and all the other SMA partners and all, often I was talking to many people, I have seen many things. Actually, I have an engineering background, and I wanted to just point out in a general fashion, there are often so many different points and ramifications that we often may not realize or see, and they're all interlinked. So I will just take a minute to point out some of them so that, so that everybody, just to this one, to share, will be able to share. One thing is, I was talking to some girls about why they're not using public transport, and they're taking two-wheelers. And then I said, is the bus stop, buses are not frequent, what is the issue, this, that, and all. They came up with a very interesting answer, which I had not realized, was that they said there is a lot of eve teasing at bus stops. So they actually prefer to take their own two-wheelers. Now, so this is again an issue of policing, right? So I'm just saying there are so many aspects why people may not, public transport may not be convenient or something else. Another thing I noticed was there was a beautiful bus stop, but everybody was always standing on the road because two cows were always sleeping in the bus stop, in summer especially. So this is an issue because the cows go looking for shade. Strictly speaking, cows should be banned in the corporation BBMP area. They should live outside the city. This is again a government decision, of permitting people within the city to raise cows. But I often have seen that cows will be sleeping in the bus stop. Similar issues I've seen of dogs being very aggressive towards small children who travel on their own in bus stops, near bus stops, and things like that. So there have also been issues like in terms of public toilets. People actually wanted public toilets removed from their neighborhood because they were not maintained. So they become an eyesore, they smell. So it's an issue of maintenance. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is there are often a lot more aspects that prevent people from becoming environmentally, using walking or being using sustainable modes of transport. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is it's a very, very complex issue with so many points, this one. For example, Also, I've noticed for a very small budget, I could do it for say ₹1,00,000. If I take a truck and take 10 laborers, I could clean up all the debris lying on, things like grinding stones, things which have been lying for years, some abandoned two-wheeler on the footpath, things like that, and make entire area, I'm saying, and make it much easier for people to walk. And many of these obstructions on the footpaths would be lying there for years. I myself have seen. But this is not something that you can showcase and photograph and put this one. So I don't know if people will want to even do this. It is purely a cleanup exercise. Just a thought of this one. I just thought of sharing these things.
Yeah, no, this is quite important because the issues that we also discussed, all the things which you just mentioned, they form part of those behavioral attributes, right? There's a new bus stop, but no one is able to use it. Why? There are a lot of things like that. There are public toilets. We said that okay, we need public toilets, but there are public toilets, but they are not being used. Why? So these things, of course, these are some really important points which make projects work. It's not just infrastructure that you put in urban context and your work is done. It's never like that. It goes beyond that, and that's why we've introduced this maintenance as one of the things which we need to look at, because we are going to implement something new. We want people to use it, to be able to use it. So how can that be done? That's why that another stakeholder consultation is also added. When you develop a proposal, we can go back and ask them that will you use it? What is it that what more do you think can be done so that you will use it? These kind of things are, yeah, I agree with you. These are very important points, and we should look at how we can make sure that what we are executing as part of SUMA, these things don't happen, or we ensure these issues are resolved. Yeah, I think point well taken.
Yeah, what I feel is many people who are not walking is probably, most likely because it's not safe for them to walk at nights. So a simple thing could be to just monitor, to improve the street lighting at night, and even just to put some cameras in many places so that people feel safe. That itself, by itself, could get more people to be walking or taking sustainable modes. Because when they go out for work in the morning, when they come back, it is already dark. So they don't want to be walking from the bus stop to home, right?
Yes.
And more important is if there is any shuttle which they can take to come, get closer to their home, at least that kind of a time period that they'll be walking in the dark will be less. More important, the lighting has to be there, and the camera should be there for some safety. At least they can, as a deterrent for any criminal activities.
Yes, quite important things. So let's make sure that when we develop proposal, these things we address. So just wanted to have all of your thoughts. If you have any questions on these processes that we discussed, that we'll be doing going forward under SUMA. So any questions related to these things?
Archita, Ram?
Hello, ma'am. I am Achyutarao from Nandivoods apartment, Belur 192 ward. So what I was observing, when we have to take walk on the roads, there are open drains which are not being covered on slabs, and there are small gaps also. The slabs have been removed, and also there is no dedicated footpaths for the pedestrians to walk on the road, because especially our road to that in that connecting road from the Belur Koppa road to our this County road is street lights are not there, and also during monsoon, because of this encroachment on the Rajkal way, even the slightest rain will cause floods, and there are all manholes everywhere. So this poses a lot of hazards, not even the walkers or also the two-wheelers. They are, and also the heavy trucks going, they don't give path to us. So that is really too much. They should have heavy traffic should be diverted to normal routes, not through this small roads. And what I find is there is no connection for about 4 to 5 kilometers. Public transport is not there. It is really horrible. If we have to go, there is a mafia of auto rickshaws. They charge just for 2-3 kilometers 100 rupees. Normally it should be around 25 rupees. So all these things without connectivity, we cannot go. Say emergency, and everyone cannot pay so much money and go. And of course, the young generation, they have their own personal transport. They are going. But what about the elders? They cannot depend on their children to drop here and there. And these people actually, they loot the money. And suppose we have some luggage, we are bound to sell our money if we are not having also. So, and the main thing is this, lights or traffic lights are horrible, street lights. So that is menacious till even in the daytime. This thing is that snake, what necklace dancing and all that happens.
Yeah.
And because
Yeah, that's quite important, because also these issues might also have come out of the focus group discussions and also from the household surveys that we did. Yes,
I have actually participated.
Yes.
And also our maid servant, they feel very unsafe to work after 5 o'clock. They go out because that is also very lonely spots. Unless this police patrolling takes place, there is no security in the neighborhood. This may be the case in almost throughout Bangalore. I'm just giving my example.
That is very rightly said. And I think this is where we really needed, and hence we did all the household service so extensive. And FGDs actually, as you mentioned, that different user groups. Now we have to give very high attention to this data that we have received and conclude on and club all the issues together, which you rightly mentioned. Like these are a few key and very specific to your neighborhood. Because when we did our household surveys, we interviewed the people from their houses, which are staying their neighborhood. And FGD is obviously involving people from different groups and actually having that conversation.
I was part of that groups. I took many my residents, neighbors to that participation in your meetings. But our main concern is when this whatever we are thinking will be fruitful, how soon? Just talking, and the outcome should be as early as possible. That's what is my request.
Yes, sure. Okay, so Manju and Sanmay sir, if you have anything to add overall.
Yeah, and Chetan for the presentation. Thank you. And Madhura, you had asked the question to all the people. May I request again if there is any further query from your side? Otherwise, we'll have some.
One small request. This sort of meetings, if it is done on the Saturday, because Monday to Friday I will be busy. Forcefully, I have to abandon my normal meetings and join here. If it can be arranged on Saturdays, that will be advantageous to most of us who are busy in these 5 days. Can it be done? Organized.
We have noted this, Mr. Achyuta. I got your point, but also would like to impress upon the point that at our level also we have a number of activities, and having all the people from our side joining on weekends also at times becomes difficult. So I'd also
like. This timing is not convenient the people who are on working. Even if they want to join and give their valuable inputs, it will be difficult for them. That's my, not only me, most of the people who may be attending today, it may not be a continuous effort. Means we should have continuously meet and discuss these things.
Yeah, your point is taken, Mr. Achita, and Manju will discuss on that. But I would also, as I told you, there are some difficulties at our end also at times to do it on weekends and some hours. Earlier, as you might have noticed, we were doing late evening also, but at times, and with this current scenario, it become difficult to always stick to late hours and all. So we'll discuss further on that then.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, this is Shweta from Wow Group.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I just need one clarification where it is mentioned the steps, like develop list of different types of proposals. That's co-create with other projects. You mean that if any of the BBMP are coming up with any project, so to sync up with them, so then we have to need to do a proposal separately, what they'll be doing and what we'll be adding on to that. Is it like that?
Yeah, and we can also suggest our I mean, whatever suggestions we have, we can also talk to them about, what we can sit together and discuss with them also.
Yeah.
That what they are doing, and if we want some changes there based on our studies, we can also tell that to them. And then, of course, we can have our part of the proposal also, which we can, connect with what they are already doing. That and enhance their proposal. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Fine. Thank you.
One question is Shashidhar here from HSR. In the proposal, at the proposal time itself, should the entire budgeting and costing should be done? Because as per the presentation, materials and everything comes a little later. So I don't know when we say budget, what level of budgeting should be in the proposal?
Yes, just to give a small brief over there. So when we are talking about developing different types of proposal, right? So we have list of different proposals. So we might know which is more budget extensive, which is less budget extensive, that ballpark figures. We will help you with understanding which are more expensive ones, which might consume lesser money. And then when we are going to the community, so later on when we are doing stakeholder consultations, we can prioritize our budgets and projects in that fashion. So that this is where we get some help of understanding what kind of budgets. If we are talking about concreting our streets, it's super expensive. So that kind of ballpark understanding in which becomes expensive and which could be a little cheaper and could be more effective. So that kind of differentiation is necessary in our projects. That is what we require here. Yeah, anything Madhura or even Manju want to add?
Adding to one point which Chetan correctly put also, there are some projects which are better done by the respective agencies also, which are cost intensive. And there are certain things which suits more with respect to SUMA kind of project. So as he told, we expect and we request the partners also to bring out those things which are more conducive towards SUMA kind of implementation and within the given budget. Yeah, Manju, anything else?
So based on what SUMA, what DULT has done in many different places, you already have an idea of how much something certain kind of project would cost, right? Yes. So in that sense, you probably can tell us how much the budget is, because we community partners have no idea. We have, particularly, absolutely no idea of how much something will cost, right? We don't even know how to go about writing a budget or coming up with a budget for something, because you have done many initiatives and you probably know how much would a certain project should cost, right? So where do we come in on, or how do we go about the whole thing?
Yeah, so I think the idea is that, we have to start building a team, first of all, that, if not now, later on, when you have to prepare those detailed drawings and all, you might need, a team of architects or engineers who can help you with this. So either we can also see if someone in the community can also support, and also DOT team will also be supporting on that. But I will let Manju take this one.
Generally, the idea is to list out all the possible proposal we can get from the community, and then put a ballpark estimate around it and see like which can be taken under SUMA program, and which are the other projects we can link it with other government agencies working in the neighborhood. That is one. Second thing is, like, as we progress with the proposal development, the respective nodal officers from DITE and WRI will help you in putting the estimate. So that help will be extended to all the community partners going forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Manju.
Yes, and just to clarify on part, so if you see the steps here we are talking about overall budgeting. It's assigning budget to the proposals, but actually further down when we are doing exploration and budgeting, that is where we do the detailed analysis. So that is based on the selected projects, and we do like focused, BOQ and preparing estimates. So this is very technical, which is where you will need help. But the previous one is something where you mostly identify the proposals and identify which ranges in what kind of expense. So mostly like if you draw a line near developing list of proposals, that is where the community can bring in the knowledge of local understandings and with the people of what kind of proposals should come in. And parallelly, then we can assign certain budgets to what kind of proposals are coming in. Yeah.
Navina?
Hello, this is Navina Sridhar from Malleshwaram Swabhimana Initiative. I would like to know, we have already given project proposals about cycle lanes and then hop-on, hop-off buses and walkability roads, like conservancy lanes to be converted into a walkability roads. So to execute that program, do we have to have our own vendor, or the DALT is providing the vendor?
Manju, do you want to take this?
That, Navina, good question. Actually, first, there are two aspects. One is I understand that the proposals that you are mentioning are related to the initial ones that you had given at at your application stage. Am I right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so that on that part, though there was no query, I'll just clarify that since further to that we had also data collection, FGD and all, while those could be relevant also while developing a proposal at this stage, but we have to see it freshly with respect to the current data and the kind of problems and issues that we are seeing in our various stages, in our household survey as well as FGDs. So we have to look it freshly. Okay. And with respect to the involvement of the vendors, there are options of doing that wherever the community can handle that depending on the size and nature of project, it has to be decided. And in some cases, there has to be vendors or contractors that I think we will give more of a technical guidance or it will be more of a technical know-how that we'll be providing, where we would expect partners to play a role in checking and verifying whether things are happening or not. And as far as hiring is concerned, that discussion we'll have further with you. But definitely DALT will provide a kind of technical inputs and some kind of a checklist to you with respect to how to monitor that, how selection has to be done and all.
Okay. because we have our own community member who's a builder who's willing to do it with a cost price.
Yeah, I think there are some models in terms of maintenance. Chetan also presented, so we can look into those options also. As just for all of you, there are some points I'm also mentioning which are related further to this workshop. As Manju and the WRA team have told, that this is a workshop primarily meant to help you in understand the while most of you know about it, but we thought it is better to have a discussion with respect to implementation, budgeting, estimate and all. So further to this, since you have got an idea, we request all the partners to discuss among yourselves, come out with your draft thoughts and proposals. And Manju has already written a mail as to if there is some thoughts with respect to tactical interventions, you let us know the locations. And in addition to that also, our nodal officers will be in touch with you. There will be further consultation. And with these interactions, we'll try to see that the proposal goes more into a realistic way. And later, that once the draft proposals are ready, that has to be presented to the SUMA task force. And based on those discussions, the kind of projects, the size of projects, the budgets and all these things will get more clearer with respect to that. And as I told you, there are some projects which fit with respect to a larger implementation where cost is more. There the departmental BBAP or other departments implementation suits more. That you need to also, while interacting with nodal officers, you can identify and you can distinguish which projects qualify for that nature and what kind of project suits more in SUMA implementation. So that way we have to go forward. So from our side, it is a sincere request that all the key members who are part of the process, since you have already been there in the data collection and all, and your initial proposals have also come. So it is very important that you start interacting among yourselves, and also once the DALT and WRE team also interact with you, that time the ideas should merge and the draft proposal should come forward. So that has to happen soon and within few weeks only. That is what we are targeting. Mostly by in this month only, that's what we are targeting to achieve. Manju, anything else? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I would just say, okay, this one. Mr. Rajaram, do you have anything?
Yeah, I don't know if it is appropriate to raise this discussion now. However, I will, since I have unmuted myself, since this is the first experiment for SUMA also, along with the SUMA partners across all the 198 wards, and a few of us are working. In terms of budgetary allocation, if you're closely working with the government, that allocation for you also, it's going to be a challenge. We would like to know a little more clearer there, so that when we start implementing the project, there should not be any lag. It's a very sensitive thing to discuss, but I thought I will highlight that.
Sure, I think DOLT team can clarify that.
Rajaram, can you repeat your concern?
for you all, this is the first experiment working with multiple SUMA partners. Earlier, you have done Church Street with BBMP. The challenge we foresee is that once we are all ready, we are all very enthusiastic as partners. Once we start finalizing the plans and it gets approved by you, and we start implementing through the tender process, will there be a lag normally which happens in a government agency? And the government and the DLT has to, I think, collaborate, make sure that the budget is available at the right time for the vendors. It is a very basic question, but I thought I should just take it up so that we are all on the same plane when we start executing the project, because the most important phase is going to be the execution.
So basically the process would be, because this grant is a small amount and the objective of SUMA is that we want to equip the community to do such projects. So the tendering process and any further delays related to that won't be there for this particular project. However, it is based on what kind of proposal you are planning to implement in the neighborhood. As of now, we are looking at the community partner is going to implement the project with consensus with other associated agencies in the government. And then the general process, what we are thinking is getting pre-quotes from the relevant vendors and finalizing the contract. So that is the process we are currently looking at it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or clarification required as far as the presentation is concerned? So if there isn't anything, we will conclude the meeting. So the recording of the session will be shared with all the community partners. So you can again go through the session and then brainstorm among yourself. Nodal officers will be getting in touch with you all for further discussion and developing on the proposal. You can also get in touch with them and schedule a convenient time as per your convenience. And we are also having a next workshop on tactical intervention, that is primarily on tactical intervention, which we'll soon confirm the date and time. As a few of you have suggested, we will try to see whether it can be done towards the end of the day or on weekends.
No, that's it. Only we can request.
Thank you all. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.